Yeah, we continue as usual. We are hiring a lot of the people. You can find this easily on the careers page that we recently added to our website. This year, we plan to hire approximately 100 people. If all goes well, 150. Right now, we are 165. And continue growing. Our May results will probably be plus 5% from our April results. So even despite the fluctuations on the market, the numbers and the volumes are still growing. So the business is expanding as expected and as planned. Speaking about the cryptocurrencies, you saw there was quite a situation with Luna and with UST. Those, I mean, we were not exposed to Luna, neither to UST. So we're pretty much unaffected by this, but of course we saw some movements that some clients were a bit afraid of USDT going somewhere and so on. So we had to urgently help some of our clients to decrease their risks, but in the end it was just a rumor. So everything was fine with the currencies. So we, as you see, we don't support hundreds of the coins, right? And we honestly think there's probably no sense in supporting hundreds of the tokens and coins. Just to let you know, everything that we list, we check that this is relatively reputable cryptocurrency and relatively stable blockchain, right? To shield you, even if you decide to opt in to holding cryptocurrencies, to shield you from the risks that you might be having. In the end, our system and majority of you are utilizing our instant hedging feature, right? So you never hold any cryptocurrencies. Just to let you know, our business model, right? If you exchange cryptocurrencies which are incoming immediately into fiat, we do the same, right? So we don't hold any cryptocurrency risks as the company either. Yeah, so the currencies which we think are not very good or unpopular or hold some risks, we delist them as we recently, I mean, probably a year ago, did with anonymous cryptocurrencies, which are sort of treated right now as being illegal because risks of ML are quite high with them by the nature of these currencies. The currencies which we added this year and the blockchain that we added this year is Binance Smart Chain. There are a lot of people who say that it's relatively centralized and so on. We understand that Binance Smart Chain is pretty much represented by a big group of brands, and we see that the customers all over the world pretty much utilize this blockchain very, very well, and BUSD sort of gaining the momentum as the stable coin, so-called, together with USDC and with USDT. So we are listing BUSD and BNB, of course, on the Binance Smart Chain. It's a quick and cheap blockchain. It's sort of, you can think about this as something similar to Tron, right? Which is always quick and cheap to send, and BUSD sort of an analog for USDT on the Tron blockchain. In our system, it's called USDT, right? As T stands for Tron. So we added the pairs of BNB on the Binance Smart Chain to prominent cryptocurrencies and to fiat. BUSD we added to cryptocurrencies and adding it to fiat right now, and BNB with Ethereum, and BNB will be added to fiat as well if it is not done yet. So anyways, if you are interested in adding these cryptocurrencies, you need some help, please contact your account managers and they will help you basically to get up to speed with these new assets and new blockchains. They work pretty much the same. You can either hold them as the currency or offset the risk immediately just by receiving it and exchanging it into Euro, USD, or whatever is the currency that you are using in your business. And also we added CPD to Euro. I will say a few words about CPD on the next slides, but anyways, you can now be buying this to pay fees with the discount with Euro as well. So you don't have to go through USDT as you had to do previously. Speaking a bit about the change of the paradigm in cryptocurrencies, right? So on the left percentage, you see the current distribution, right? And on the right, you see the previous distribution. So you see that Bitcoin still being one of the main cryptocurrencies that are used for payments. I think this is basically meaning that some established players on the market sort of still very much pro Bitcoin, and the customers which they have, they just used to Bitcoin. But this is completely logical that the value, the percentage of the Bitcoin transactions will be decreasing. And I think this is more a good thing than a bad thing, because Bitcoin is not the easiest cryptocurrency to deal with. The fees for transactions are quite expensive, and blockchain is not very scalable. As you know, we make these transactions still instant, right? And withdrawals are still free, but this is not the cheapest cryptocurrency to deal with. So we see that from January, right now, it decreased approximately 6%. LTC increased slightly, Ethereum increased slightly, USDT increased a lot, right? So USDT is USDT on Tron. Right now, I think it's one of the best cryptocurrencies for the payments, and probably in your businesses with the settlements, with the payments, with your partners, with your, I don't know, suppliers. So all the B2B operations that you do with crypto, you see that pretty much everyone moved to USDT. And right now, pretty much everyone already using USDT on Tron instead of USDT on Ethereum, which is in our system called USDT-E. We still see some increase in USDT transactions, even on Ethereum blockchain, but we don't think this is very sustainable until at least Ethereum solves problems with unexpected prices for gas, which is sort of a mining fee analog in Ethereum. With the Doge, I mean, these are more like exotic cryptocurrencies, but you see that Doge, so-called, it's sort of having still a good traction, and Doge has its own community, which you see it's still managing this. Still managing to stay afloat with being 1.5% of the amount of transactions that are happening. We prepared a very nice chart where you can see pretty much the dynamics of the cryptocurrencies, right? So you see that Bitcoin is on the obvious decrease when LTC is sort of flowing up and down. Ethereum is on the increase. USDT is definitely increasing. And basically Doge and USDT-E not so crazily, right? And the amount of these transactions is not that high in the end. USDT-E, which is USDT on Ethereum blockchain, sort of sometimes very expensive. So if I were you, I wouldn't be betting on this cryptocurrency extremely, because it's expensive for the user to send it to you, and it's relatively expensive for you as the client to send USDT, because the gas price is pretty much unclear before you really start sending the transaction. We have some shields sort of for you, that if transactions are growing crazily, we just switch off the withdrawals to save your wallets from basically losing some unexpected amount of funds for fees, I mean. Plans for the CPD, just a quick reminder, CPD is the token which is a loyalty system in our crypto processing. Basically, it gives you discounts for all the operations that you're running through our system. The discounts are from 20 to 40%, depending on the amount of the CPD that you have and your volumes. You don't really have to have a lot of the CPD. You can buy every week, every month, and you will be getting a discount. We are launching CPD Foundation, a legal entity which will be representing all the developments connected with the token, launching new programs with different exchanges on the farmings, listing on the centralized exchanges, basically to allow different retail customers to be able to buy CPD easier, and onboarding of new ambassadors in different geographics to promote CPD together with our services as a business. Basically, right now I am on Malta representing us on the Casino Beats Summit, and we will be visiting the London event, which is the betting on sports in Europe. Pretty much during the same time we are in Amsterdam on the Money 2020. And we are again in Amsterdam for IGB Live in July, where I would be glad to see all of you to answer questions or to have meetings how we can strengthen our relationship. As you see, London and Amsterdam, so the betting on sports and money 2020 are pretty much happening at the same time. So I will be in London. If you would be on the Money 2020, you would be able to meet our colleagues. Just few words to add, which are not in the presentation, but I think this is very important for you to know. We, as a company, as a business, continue to be oriented on the customer, right? So one of our strong sides is the close communication with our clients. You have your account managers with whom I'm sure you have a very good relationships to discuss any sort of questions, any sort of ideas how to expand the cooperation, how to help to grow your business, and pretty much anything that's the feature requests or any problems that you have with the system or with the ways how we work. We are always happy to listen to you and basically include the things in our roadmaps if they make sense from the business view. Then also informing you that we are right now very heavily hiring the development teams into development teams, basically to increase the development capacity, to do basically three things, right? To work on the feature requests from you and from the market, to implement the innovations that we feel needed for you as well in the future, in upcoming months or years. And the third one is basically the stability, scaling, and the reporting of the system, right? So the system is always working quick, and you can get all the needed reports from it, as well as our internal departments, right? So to have these three work streams which are not intersecting with each other a lot. Recently, our account management team started doing monthly calls with all of you. So I hope you opt in for this option. This call is basically have the goal for you to share your opinions, how we can become better, and for us basically to understand what are your challenges, what are your needs, to plan features and to plan approaches, change the processes to help you better. Right, so this is pretty much the update from me on the events, on the things that we are working on, and what you should be expecting from us in the future. We have some nice functionalities down the line, like the new features to receive the payments, which will make it more blockchain agnostic. So you would be able to receive different assets in a more streamlined way without really any integration needed on your side, because I understand integration and the capacity of the team is sort of very golden, very limited, and very valuable. So yeah, we are working on that as well. Some developments also with listing another blockchains with the Lightning Network and so on, as well as just improving the stability and speed of the system. Anyways, on the monthly discussions with your account managers, you will be getting all these updates, and you can be asking questions of the things that are unclear to you. Yes, so pretty much I'm done with the presentation.
So thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you, Max, for such a warm introduction. Well, my role here, I hope, is to provide some context around the nexus between your businesses and compliance, transaction monitoring, why on earth you have to think about it, if you have, of course. So one of the things I would like to start first is something around how actually the way people perceive crypto assets. Of course, all of you present here, you know that crypto is an easy and legitimate payment method, which has lots of pros in comparison to more traditional ways to remit funds. However, it happened so historically is that cryptocurrencies usually hit the front pages of newspapers or get media coverage due to like discovering of some sort of scam, collapsing of particular coin, as Max previously mentioned, or shutting the darknet marketplace, which was a huge event for compliance community this spring. So it may sort of give a false impression that cryptocurrencies are widely used in some sort of illegitimate activity. However, when we are looking at the growth within the industry, cryptocurrency usage continues to grow each year, and millions of people use it to transact, invest, store value. According to Chain Analysis report, over 15 trillion worth of cryptocurrency transactions were made last year, and only 0.5% of all that trillions were associated with criminal activities. So as you can see, these statistics, this percentage is relatively small compared to traditional financing methods, and especially we take into account cash incentive transactions. In fact, legitimate cryptocurrency usage is far outpacing the development of illegal use, and illicit activities share of cryptocurrency transaction volume has never been lower according to this statistics data. The transparency of blockchains and cryptocurrencies helps quantify transaction in ways that are simply not possible with fiat currencies and traditional financing. So we can quite confidentially say that the crypto asset industry, despite not being highly overregulated, is quite successful in combating illicit activity. However, we also have to balance the positives of the growth and mass adoption of cryptocurrency, and understand that at the end of the day, 14 billion worth of illegal activity represents quite a significant problem. Because of criminal abuse of cryptocurrency, it creates huge impediment for continued adoption. It heightens the likelihood of imposed restrictions by the governments. And of course, worst of all, it victimizes and causes material losses to innocent people around the world. This is why we need to apply transaction monitoring and have special software called blockchain analytics to analyze the blockchain, basically. We also encourage you as our clients to be vigilant and analyze your customers' behavior based on your relationship history, as you may notice other red flags. For example, if your end customer usually deposited not more than $100 or euros per transaction by credit card, but suddenly started to invest tens of thousands of euros by crypto. It would be normal from our perspective, but it can ring a bell for you based on your relationship history, because you have an unrestricted view of your end customers' movement of funds and activities, making it possible to spot such unusual behavior, specifically in dealings with crypto. At CoinsPaid, we do have quite sophisticated algorithms to help detect or trigger alerts that may indicate money laundering or other suspicious activities, but they are mostly focused on movements of crypto. And as no system is foolproof, the transactional monitoring specialists perform some of the work manually. We cannot disclose all of the details on our monitoring rules and triggers. This information might be used potentially by some malicious purposes, but we will try to give you some intro of how we do those things. Transaction monitoring can be defined as a formal process for identifying suspicious transaction and the procedure for reporting the same internally or externally. This sounds pretty formalistic and boring, but in the reality, the life it's quite challenging and exciting job. Each day in the transaction unit doesn't resemble the previous because the data constantly changes. And monitoring means not only analyzing a client's transactions to detect whether the transaction appeared to be suspicious, it is also the problem here is that we cannot simply apply the traditional rules about wire in and out as in banks, because they simply doesn't work. So we had to tailor our own thresholds, rules, and be aware of what the market demands. To really catch on what the unusual activity for us would look like, we have to ask and collect lots of information during the initial onboarding stage and during the course of our business relationship. This is why we do ask questions, not just to bother you with, because we want to do it, but because we have to understand what would be normal in the course of your business to be able to detect some abnormalities. The essential part of our job is to stay aware and adequately react to the typologies, as you can see on point 4. In the ML safety context, the term typology usually refers to the various techniques used by criminals to launder money or finance terrorism. You know, these guys can be quite creative in developing new methods, so legitimate business must constantly be on the alert and be aware of latest trends, so-called. Some of the ways criminals are trying to do to conceal their payments includes the use of privacy coins. This is the reason we delisted anonymous coins a year ago. Also, sometimes it can be obscuring the amount, the destination, or the origin of transaction. There is also a specific typology known as chain hopping. This is when crypto assets are exchanged for various other kinds of crypto assets, just by way of moving from one blockchain to another, which helps obscure the flow of funds and makes it slightly harder to detect and creates a lot of like multi-layering. So you cannot, it will take longer time to find the initial source of funds. There is a wide range of crypto asset focused gaming sites among our clients. And I refer here not only to the online gambling. We see a growing number of websites that enable users to swap cryptocurrencies for in-game currencies or values such as World of Warcraft gold, Linden dollars, or skin trading. The use of cryptocurrency here helps to build an increasingly intricate and modern online gambling and gaming ecosystem. But while these services are supporting an impressive online infrastructure, unfortunately, they can also be exploited in money laundering schemes, even without the merchant knowledge of what's going on. So online casinos, including those that are crypto asset only and those that accept both fiat and cryptocurrencies, might be effective for cleaning illicit funds. These schemes resemble tried and tested money laundering methods that criminals have employed for decades at even on-site casinos globally. So basically, in this typology, chips or credits are purchased from the casino using some kind of illicit funds. And when the criminal cashes out his winnings or accepts a loss as part of the cost of laundering, he receives new funds and a receipt from the casino that disguises the gambling activity as the source of the original funds. In-game currencies or goods are available nowadays on many online exchanges and particular websites. So criminals are swapping cryptocurrencies, thus providing a valuable method for layering in multiple online environments, most of which are basically untrackable, because in-game currencies and goods can later be exchanged on other dedicated platforms, not linked to the place where they originally were exchanged. This in turn allows a criminal to break up their transaction trail through cyberspace and makes it hard to detect and identify. So ML risks require more than just appropriate policies, procedures, or staff. We also we are obliged to have adequate and appropriate monitoring systems. This involves a blockchain analytic software system. It covers all accounts and transactions of our clients and enables a trend analysis of activity, identifies unusual business relationships and transactions, particularly concerning changes in the transactional profile of clients. It allows not only us as a payment processor to gain a centralized knowledge of information, but also interacts with you as our clients to bring your attention to potentially customers that require additional attention from your side. For transaction monitoring, CoinsPaid uses the services of Crystal and SCORECHAIN, both of which are one of the leading tools for control, identification, and analysis of blockchain. Those tools automatically provide information regarding specific transaction in real time. This is exactly what you can see in the back office in the column risk score. And for us, it also provides a history of specific virtual assets before their current and last transaction appearance. So in the end of the day, we have a clear understanding of the whole virtual asset history and their risk scoring and their flow. When a high-risk transaction is detected, which is basically more than 75 according to our policies, we conduct a manual check with an additional request. This is the step where we might have some additional requests to you as our client. In your back offices, you see Crystal's data that was performed in the real-time monitoring of the transaction. So when the transaction indeed occurred. I will give you more details on this particular vendor because ScoreChain we used mostly for our internal investigation. So risk score is propagated to all transaction and addresses. Here is complicated part, so I would require some of your attention. As you probably wonder how it is calculated, this is where the story becomes real complicated. Each address has 3 sets of signals, and the degree of influence of all entity types on the address. It can be non-directional signals. These are calculated on the basis of the weighted graph of transactions between different clusters, and sending and receiving signals. They are calculating on where the edges of those graphs, they represent the direction of incoming or outgoing funds flow, and the weight is the amount of transfer. Further, there is a correlation between on how much of an influence different signals have on the end of risk score. For example, sending or receiving funds from an address linked to potentially fraudulent exchange address or darknet marketplace most likely will result into a high score, and sending from a payment processor, another well-known exchange with adequate AML controls, will result into low risk score. Another critical parameter that we would like you to pay attention to is risky inflow. It can show a specific fiat equivalent of funds potentially related to illegal activities, because sometimes risk score can be like 25%, but actual risky inflow would be below $1 because risk parameters of addresses that were many steps away from the real transaction influence the risk score, but in reality, you didn't receive any potentially illicit funds. So the best practice would be to have a system of control on your side as a merchant and pay additional attention to users generating larger amounts of high-risk transactions than others in comparison to other users. And please note that these are indicative values and they might require additional investigation. We are always here to provide you explanations on how specifically that risk score was calculated and send you a report more detailed. Because in our back office, we see we were able to conduct more in-depth study of the transaction tree. So the analysis carried out for each transaction and each merchant separately, we take into account lots of factors such as results of manual verification of the transactions through Crystal, examples of which you can see on this slide, results of verification of the transaction from our second vendor, SCORECHAIN, because they use slightly different algorithms and databases. So we can have, from two sources of information, we receive more data. We also take into account identified patterns of transactions, the size and number of risky transactions of the particular analyzed merchant, and data on monitoring transactions of previous periods. Sometimes transactions that are not connected at the first glance can somehow be occurring in several hops, as you can see on the second example. In most cases, it can be a coincidence. We are quite big processor, so it's okay. There can be rational explanation behind it. It is the step when we require your cooperation and assistance to see the bigger picture. We ask to provide supporting documents for the transaction. It is important to note that this does not mean that we suspect you or your end customers of something bad. This is part of the normal standard check during transaction monitoring process. It can be even done without any triggers on a random base. Sometimes we receive from you a counter request asking us to clarify exactly what information we need from you as a client, because we simply ask, please provide supporting documents for this transaction. The tricky thing here is that, unfortunately, we cannot provide an exhaustive list because we simply do not know. Since we have no detailed information about what kind of transaction it was, we ask you to explain to us whether it was a deposit from the clients, payment for some services, or settlement from another payment processor. The idea behind is to make sure that you are aware of the transaction's business purpose and collect data on the counterparty. In traditional banking finance, you see it's the purpose of payments and the information about the recipient or beneficiary. In cryptocurrency processing, we see only input address and amount. So for the rest of data, we have to ask you. Basically, once you receive such requests from our compliance team and account teams, you can send us everything that you have on this particular transaction: invoice, agreement, QVC of the end customer if you're a regulated business and obliged to collect it, proof of delivery of works, agreements, invoices. It can be any information that, in your opinion, would help us to clarify the purpose of the transaction. Well, I hope this was helpful, and now I'm ready to answer your questions, if any.